What if Leonardo da Vinci's greatest secret wasn't genius talent, but strategic rebellion against accepted truth, a mental framework you can steal right now? What if everything you learned about success is wrong? Here's something nobody tells you. The biggest obstacle to your breakthrough isn't lack of talent or resources. It's the invisible prison you've been living in your entire life, and you don't even realize you're locked up. Think about it for a second. How many times have you heard, "That's just how it's done"? How many times have you swallowed advice without questioning it? We're conditioned from childhood to follow the blueprint. School teaches us to memorize answers, not question them. Work teaches us to execute strategies, not challenge them. Society teaches us to fit in, not stand out. And here's the kicker. We actually prefer it this way. There's psychological comfort in conformity. When you follow the crowd, nobody judges you. When you stick to the proven path, you don't risk looking stupid. When you color inside the lines, you feel safe. But safe doesn't equal growth. Safe equals stagnation disguised as progress. Now transport yourself back to 15th century Italy. Picture Leonardo da Vinci's world, an era dominated by rigid religious dogma, where the church controlled what people could think, say, and create. An era where artistic traditions were set in stone, where questioning authority could literally get you killed. An era where conformity wasn't just expected, it was enforced with extreme prejudice. Yet Da Vinci looked at this entire system and decided, nope, I'm going to see for myself. While other artists copied their master's techniques without deviation, he was cutting open dead bodies in secret chambers. While tradition dictated how human anatomy supposedly worked, he was mapping every muscle, every bone, every vein with his own eyes. While everyone accepted that birds flew by divine magic, he studied wing mechanics to understand the physics of flight. Da Vinci understood something profound that most people never grasp. Real innovation doesn't come from optimizing the existing playbook. It comes from having the guts to throw out the playbook and write a new one. But that requires something our modern world systematically suppresses: the courage to disobey. And here's what's crucial to understand. We're not talking about teenage rebellion. We're not talking about breaking rules just to be contrarian. We're talking about something far more sophisticated and strategic. A systematic approach to questioning the assumptions that keep you trapped in mediocrity. A mindset that asks why, when everyone else just repeats because. See, Da Vinci didn't wake up one day and decide to be different. He developed a methodology for dissecting accepted truths, identifying their weaknesses, and reconstructing better frameworks. He turned disobedience into an operating system for innovation, and that operating system is something you can install in your own mind. But here's the question you need to ask yourself right now. Are you ready to examine the invisible chains holding you back? Because what we're about to explore next will show you exactly how Da Vinci weaponized strategic disobedience to become a legend, and how you can do the same. How questioning everything becomes your competitive advantage. Let's get something straight right now. When people talk about Leonardo da Vinci, they usually frame him as this mystical genius who was just born different. Like he came out of the womb with a superhuman brain that worked on a completely different operating system than yours or mine. That's a comforting lie we tell ourselves. The truth is way more interesting and, frankly, more empowering. Da Vinci wasn't a random rebel smashing rules for fun. He was a strategic disruptor. Every challenge to established truth was calculated, intentional, methodical. This wasn't chaos. This was precision engineering applied to thought itself. While Renaissance artists religiously copied their masters' brushstrokes, Da Vinci asked, "Why do we paint this way? Is there a superior method nobody's considered?" While scientists parroted ancient theories about human anatomy, he grabbed a scalpel and investigated for himself. Not stubbornness. Scientific curiosity weaponized systematically. Think about the audacity required. In an era where the church monopolized knowledge, he was dissecting cadavers in secret, violating every social and religious taboo imaginable. And why? Because he needed to know the truth. Not the truth they told him, but the truth he could observe, touch, measure, verify. He conducted over 30 dissections, creating anatomical drawings so precise they wouldn't be surpassed for centuries. And this wasn't limited to anatomy. He questioned everything. How does flight work? I'm not accepting abstract theories. I'll study birds for years, sketching every wing movement, every angle of attack. How does water behave? I'll observe every eddy, every wave, every flow pattern until I understand the laws governing fluid dynamics. This was his systematic approach: obsessive observation, relentless experimentation, and interdisciplinary synthesis. He connected art with science, mechanics with biology, mathematics with music. He viewed the world not as separate departments, but as an integrated system where everything relates to everything else. You know what this means for you? It means genius isn't some mystical gift you either have or don't. It's a choice. It's the conscious decision to refuse accepting what you're told until you verify it yourself. It's the discipline to question your own assumptions before questioning others. Da Vinci showed us that exponential personal growth doesn't come from doing more of the same, just faster. It comes from asking whether the same still makes sense. It comes from having the courage to say, "I don't know," when everyone pretends to know. It comes from embracing the discomfort of starting from zero, even when you're already considered an expert. And here's the most powerful insight. Every time Da Vinci disobeyed conventional wisdom, he wasn't being arrogant. He was being humble. Because it takes far more humility to admit you don't know and need to discover than to pretend prepackaged answers are sufficient. So the real question isn't whether you'll challenge established thinking. The question is, how much of your potential are you wasting because you're afraid to question? And now that you understand the method, are you ready to discover the exact mental models he used to process reality? Why Da Vinci's thinking patterns multiply your creative potential. Now, we're diving deep. Because one thing is knowing Da Vinci questioned everything. A completely different thing is understanding exactly how his brain processed information. And here's the incredible part. These mental models weren't exclusive to him. You can replicate them. First model, first principles. Thinking. This is devastatingly powerful when you truly understand it. Most people think by analogy. I'll do this because it resembles that thing that worked before. I'll follow this path because some successful person followed it. But Da Vinci operated differently. He descended to the essence, to the most fundamental elements. When he wanted to understand flight, he didn't copy other inventors' designs. He returned to the essential question: what is flight? What's the basic physics allowing something heavier than air to remain suspended? He studied hollow bird bones, understood weight to lift ratios, calculated angles of attack. He rebuilt knowledge from the foundation, without presuppositions. Second model, synoptic vision. This is the secret weapon nobody tells you about. Da Vinci saw connections where others saw separation. For him, there was no art on one side and science on the other. Everything was an integrated system. The golden ratio mathematics he used in paintings was identical to what he observed in shell growth and galaxy spirals. He took knowledge from engineering and applied it to anatomy, learned about fluids observing water and applied it to understand blood flow in the human heart, studied architecture and used those principles to design bone structures. This cross-pollination between different fields created insights nobody else could perceive. Third model, and this is the most counterintuitive, embracing ignorance. While others clung to what they knew, Da Vinci actively sought what he didn't know. He kept notebooks listing questions. Why is the sky blue? How does a woodpecker's tongue work? What's the perfect proportion of light and shadow? Hundreds of unanswered questions, and he pursued each one obsessively. He understood that true knowledge begins when you admit ignorance. Not that lazy ignorance of someone who doesn't care, but curious, active ignorance that propels you toward the unknown. He called himself a disciple of experience because he knew learning from real life was worth more than 1,000 ready-made theories. Now translate this to your life. When was the last time you genuinely questioned a fundamental assumption about your work, your relationships, your goals? When was the last time you connected ideas from totally different fields to create something new? When was the last time you admitted not knowing something important and actually chased down the answer? These mental models transformed Da Vinci from a talented painter into one of history's greatest innovators. And the most liberating part, You don't need to be a Renaissance genius to apply them. You just need the courage to think differently. Drop models in the comments below and tell me, which of these 3 thinking patterns challenges you most? First principles thinking, synoptic vision, or embracing ignorance? If this content is expanding your mind, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming videos. Now comes the most practical part. How do you apply this in real life? What happens when you train your brain like Da Vinci? Theory is beautiful, but let's be real. What you actually want to know is how to apply this in the real world, right? How to transform these abstract concepts into concrete actions that change your life today, not 10 years from now. So grab my hand, because we're building your personal action plan. Exercise 1. Challenge your assumptions daily. This sounds simple, but it's revolutionary. Pick one routine in your life. Could be your morning routine, a work process, how you organize your time. Now ask 3 questions. Why do I do it this way? Is this truly the best method? What would happen if I did the opposite? For example, you wake up, drink coffee, check emails. Why? Always did it this way. But what if you reversed it? What if you checked emails only after 2 hours of deep work? What if you drank coffee after exercising? Test it. Experiment. Observe the result. Da Vinci didn't theorize, he tested. You can too. Exercise 2. Implement intentional cross-pollination. Here's the game. Every week, expose your brain to something completely outside your field. If you work in tech, read ancient philosophy. If you're an artist, study neuroscience. If you're an entrepreneur, dive into architecture. The magic isn't just consuming diverse content. It's forcing your brain to make connections. Ask actively, how can what I'm learning about honeycomb structures help me organize my team better? How can impressionist painting principles improve my sales presentation? Sounds weird? Perfect. Weirdness generates creativity. Exercise 3. Cultivate beginner's mind. Here's the hardest challenge. Approach a problem you already know well as if it's your first time. Forget everything you know and look with fresh eyes. Pretend you're an alien who just landed on Earth and needs to understand this from scratch. Let's say you've worked in marketing for years. Great. Now forget everything. Look at an advertisement and ask, why should people care about this? Not the textbook answer, but the real, human, emotional answer. You'll discover that much of what we consider expertise is just automatic repetition of patterns. Nobody questions anymore. And here's the ninja trick. Keep a questions notebook, exactly like Da Vinci did. Not to write answers, to write questions you can't answer. How could I work half the hours and produce double the output? Why am I afraid of public speaking when talking to friends is natural? What's the first wrong assumption I make when I wake up? These questions seem silly until you start genuinely pursuing them, because each unanswered question is a locked door to exponential growth. And each door you open multiplies your possibilities. The difference between you today and you 6 months from now applying these exercises? It's the difference between improving and transforming, between growing linearly and growing exponentially, between following the map and redrawing the entire territory. But here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Knowing isn't enough. You need to do, and do it wrong initially, and adjust, and do it again, exactly like Da Vinci did thousands of times in his notebooks. So the question is, will you just consume this content, or will you apply it? Because the next level only exists on the other side of action. Why small rebellions today create revolutions tomorrow. Let's close with the most powerful truth of all. And this truth will completely change how you view your own potential. Because when you implement the strategic disobedience mindset, something extraordinary happens. You stop improving and start transforming. Understand the difference? Incremental improvement is when you get 10% better doing the same thing. You optimize, refine, adjust. It's important, sure, but exponential transformation? That's when you completely change the game. That's when you stop competing and create a new category where you're the only one. Da Vinci wasn't the best painter of his era because he painted faster or with prettier colors. He redefined what painting could be. He brought anatomy, optics, psychology, mathematics into art. He created a way of painting nobody had seen before, because nobody had thought that way before. And this wasn't an accident. It was a direct consequence of this mindset we're dissecting here. When you question fundamental assumptions, when you connect different fields, when you embrace the unknown, you don't get a little bit better. You enter a completely different trajectory. Think in practical terms. In your work, your business, your career, while others compete for crumbs in the same saturated market, you could be creating a new market. While others copy success strategies, you could be inventing an approach nobody imagined. But this only happens if you have the courage to disobey common sense. And here's the perfect timing. We live in an era of radical transformation. Artificial intelligence, automation, technologies emerging daily. The world no longer needs people who follow manuals perfectly. Machines do that better. The world desperately needs people who think differently, who connect the unexpected, who create what doesn't exist yet. This mindset Da Vinci embodied 500 years ago is exactly what separates those who thrive from disruption from those devoured by it. Adaptability isn't reacting quickly to changes. It's anticipating changes that haven't happened yet, because you see patterns others ignore. And there's more. His legacy proves it. 500 years later, we still study his notebooks, still draw inspiration from his inventions, still try to decipher the Mona Lisa's secrets. Why? Because he didn't create temporary works. He created ways of thinking that transcend time and context. And you? What legacy do you want to leave? I'm not talking about historical grandeur. I'm talking about real impact in your life and the lives of those you love. What version of you exists on the other side of this transformation? The one that stops conforming and starts creating. The one that stops copying and starts innovating. Here's what I learned studying Da Vinci deeply. He wasn't special because he was born special. He became special by choosing every single day not to accept ready-made answers, by choosing curiosity over certainty, by choosing exploration over comfort. And that same choice is available to you right now. Not tomorrow, not when you have more time, more resources, more knowledge. Now, you can keep living inside the comfortable cage of conventions, or you can start testing the bars, finding the weaknesses, building your own exit. Because in the end, exponential personal growth isn't about having right answers. It's about asking better questions. And Da Vinci taught us that the best questions always start with one simple but revolutionary word. Why? Drop breakthrough in the comments if you're ready to apply this mindset in your life, and share with someone who needs to hear this message. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, because this is just the beginning of the journey. And remember, your transformation begins when you stop obeying what always limited you. This video is for educational and inspirational purposes. The strategies presented should be adapted to your personal and professional reality. Always seek balance between innovation and responsibility.